All right, so let's jump in. Today we're going to be setting up a Lambda behind API gateway to function as a REST API. So first thing we're doing, just on the AWS console here, let's jump over to API gateway. And we're going to create a new resource here. We're going to create a REST API right down here. There's a couple different options for API gateway here. So HTTP APIs, very, very similar to REST. It can do pretty much the same things as these REST APIs. If you want to see like extensive differences here, AWS has this little doc page here that kind of talks about choosing between the two APIs, kind of has their trade-offs, what they can do, and it kind of goes through each of those. So the main thing that we want from the REST API option is, let's see here, is this one right here, the request body transformation. So when requests come into Lambda, the Lambda receives an event, right? It doesn't just receive your like post request or get request body, whatever you send through, it receives an event, and AWS structures and does some fancy things with that event object. So using the REST API gives us like a nice transformation out of the box that our Lambda knows how to work with. So that's why we're using the REST API. If you don't know why you would choose HTTP, I'd recommend just stick with REST. Okay, so let's select this one on the left here. We don't want to choose the one on the right. This is for private, like internal networks. If you have like internal services behind like a VPC, basically, then you would use that. But we're talking with the external world, right? We want to open this up to the public. So we choose this REST API here. We'll do build. And yeah, we can just hit OK. So there's a couple ways of doing it. If you happen to be using Swagger or OpenAPI 3, you can actually import your Swagger spec right here if you have that set up for your API. For us, we'll just choose new API. Let's give it, we'll do that, and here we can just do regional, that's fine. And we'll hit create API. Okay, so we've set up our API here, and now the first screen we see is these methods. So these are basically the endpoints that your API exposes. So you set up a specific endpoint, you could do /API, I don't know, test, whatever you want to do, and that route would be, that route could be routed to an individual Lambda. So you could have a bunch of different endpoints here, and you could have Lambdas for each one if you'd like. For us, let's go ahead and do create method. And we'll do any, so if you want, you can choose specific endpoints with specific methods. Maybe you just want to handle get for this endpoint, or post for this endpoint. You can choose that. For us, we want all request types to come through. So we'll hit any, and we'll hit the check mark to create that. Okay, so we're in the next stage of setting up here, and we want to set up with a Lambda function here. There's a couple of different options. Maybe we'll cover those in later videos, but you could have it go to an AWS service. You could route this to another service or VPC, etc. But we're going to do Lambda, and we want to do this proxy integration. So remember what I talked about with mapping the request body to the Lambda. So this right here, request will be proxied to Lambda with request details available in the event. So we'll have like the method that the request has, we'll have the body, etc. So we'll choose that. Lambda region, US West 2. And I don't have any Lambda set up on this account. So let's create a Lambda function here. And we'll do author from scratch, and we'll do dev Lambda. Yep. And we'll choose our runtime. We're using Go, so I'll select Go. Architecture, if you really want, you can choose Intel 86 or ARM. I'm just going to leave it with Intel, just standard. And that's all we need to worry about here. So we'll create. And then we'll upload the code to this shortly. So it'll take a little bit. All right, so we have our Lambda set up here. And let's go back to API Gateway. And let's see, do we need to refresh? We may need to refresh the page. Okay, so we're back on the screen, Lambda function. We want that proxy integration to map the request body over, and we'll choose our function. So dev Lambda, And this right here is the default timeout that you use for these requests for this API gateway. It's 29 seconds. And keep in mind, you don't have to use this. You could set the timeout over on Lambda. Lambda has some timeout limits, and you can look into those and choose if you want if you want like a longer timeout or a shorter timeout, up to you. I'm just going to leave this default timeout. So we'll hit save. And it says here we're going to give our API gateway permission to invoke our Lambda. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so now we have our Lambda set up, so requests will come in and they're going to invoke or trigger our Lambda right here. So the next thing we need to do is deploy this API gateway. So we can go to Actions, we can go to Deploy API, and then this is where we set up stages. So for example, a test version of your API could be deployed to a stage named beta. So you probably have like a production stage or a beta stage. Let's do beta, just like they said. This is the beta stage. Okay, and if you want any custom deployments, what we did for this specific stage or this code or this deployment, you can put that in. I don't really care about that. Let's hit deploy. Okay, so now we see here invoke URL. So AWS gives us this URL right here, and if we hit it, if we click this, and you see it's routed, it routes it to that stage /beta. So if we click this, this will actually invoke our Lambda. We don't have any code deployed to our Lambda, so this wouldn't really work right now. So the next step, let's get our Lambda set up, and let's upload it and deploy it here. Let's hop back to VS Code, and from the previous video, we had a very basic Lambda set up, pretty much just had a logger. It had this init function here, and it had the main. So init for Lambdas here, and it gets run before main. So basically, if you have like a DB, if you're using like RDS or some other database service, you would set up the connection here, and you would have like a global variable scope to it. So for example, to show how that works, we're setting up a logger here. And if you have any questions about why we're using Uber Zap or this specific logger, check out the previous video in the series. I'll link it in the description. But pretty much what we need to do is set up our handler. So let's do func my handler. And here we'll pass in a context. So it's events.proxy request. And the response is events.api gateway proxy response. And also an error. Okay, so let's do response is going to be a new API gateway gateway response here. And here is where we can set all of the response values. So the ones that if you want headers, you can do that. I don't really care about those. Let's get rid of those. Don't care about that. So our body can be anything. This could be an encoded JSON payload, and that's what we'll end up doing here. But the status code for now is HTTP status. We'll do status OK. And then we just want to return the response right here. That's what I'll do there, and let's do my handler. We'll pass in my handler as the function's handler. So with the event coming in, let's say you have multiple endpoints for your Lambda. We can access those with event.path. So you could set this up to check if the event path is, I don't know, / whatever. And then you could handle that specific event path. So you could say if event.path is hello, we can set this up. We can set our response up to return, like hello world. Else, you can have like a default response here that could return something else. So if we want to do that, you could say we could put response up here. And we can set the type to be events.api gateway. Let's copy this over. And then in here, we can say, we can set the response to be whatever type we'd like. So response in this case, if it's /hello, it's hello world. Otherwise, we can do here, default endpoint. And what's our error here? All right, so we fixed that, just had the wrong type. Okay, so we have a handler for /hello if the path is /hello. We also have a handler for just a default handler. Let's log the request that we receive as well. So for all of our endpoints, doesn't matter what the path is, let's log it. And we're going to log the body. So this is that JSON body. So whatever your request sends over, if it's like a post request or a put, if there's a body, it's going to be logged here. So we can say here, let's log the body, and let's also log the path. We got, let's do the method too, sure. We have an extra O. And it's HTTP method. Okay. All right, so this looks good. Let's go ahead and build this and deploy this here. So from our previous video, we have this little generate function, and this this compiles and builds our executable, our Go executable, and it also zips it up so we can upload it through the console. So let's do generate function. Okay, so we've generated that, and we've put it out to main. Let's go back to our Lambda. Okay, so we want to edit this. Our handler isn't called hello, it's called main. That's what we zip the file as. Let's do main. Let's save. And then let's upload our code from a zip file. And I'm going to upload this here. All right, so here's our function.zip, and let's hit save. Okay, so we uploaded our zip. Lambda's all set up. So now we should actually be able to invoke this endpoint here. So I'm going to do this with a post request. So let's hop over to VS Code, and I'm going to go ahead and type out our post. Okay, so I have this post request here. So I'm putting in a header, just content type, application JSON, methods post. The request method is post, and then I'm just passing in some sample, just some random sample data here that I found online. And let's make that request. Okay, so I did JQ to pretty print like a JSON response. We don't have a JSON response yet, so we got this little invalid numeric. But here we see we got the default endpoint, and that's what we're expecting, right? If the path isn't hello, we're going to see this default endpoint. So if we do /hello, we see that we get this missing authentication token. So there's one piece that I forgot to set up here. So let's hop back to our API gateway. So this, we need to be very precise on how we specify these resources. So this will only handle, how we have it set up now is only going to handle this default endpoint. We can't do like /hello or API /pets, whatever. We need to set up a new kind of sub resource. So we can hit create resource here. And what we need to do is create a proxy resource. So this is saying any path is going to get handled by this resource here. So if you want to be really strict, you can set up individual resources. We could have a base resource, you could have a /hello resource, /pets, whatever you want. If you don't want to have your API users just calling any endpoint, you could do that. What we're going to do is set up this proxy resource so we can handle any endpoint we'd like. So we're going to call it proxy, and this is how we're going to call it here. So you can add path parameters using brackets, anything you'd like. Right here. So let's go ahead and hit create resource. And now let's set it up. So let's set up this proxy resource here, and we'll do Lambda function proxy, US2, and let's point it to our same Lambda. And default timeout's fine. Yep, we'll give permissions. So we set up the resource, now we need to deploy it. So anytime you make changes to this gateway, you gotta redeploy it. So we'll say beta, and we'll hit deploy. Okay, so now we have this set up, we've got this deployment set up, and it handles the base / endpoint, and it also proxies any other endpoints through as well. So let's come back, let's clear this, and let's rerun that request. So now we see on the /hello endpoint, we get hello world. Hello world is sent right back. And if we do some other endpoint, we get this, this default endpoint right here. Okay, so there's like a really basic API using Lambda. One last thing we'll do, I'll show you how to set up just a JSON response. So instead of putting like hello world in the body, you could have, you know, whatever data you want to return. If you set up like RDS or you're using a database to make some queries, you could format the response and return that right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say body, and we'll just, also there's going to be an error that we don't care about. We'll say json.marshal. So here we're just going to marshal some struct. So we'll create that. So we'll give it a status and a message here. And all we need to do is say, we'll make a new default response. And let's build it out, status okay. All right, and let's bring this in. We'll have a different body if it is this endpoint, this path. We'll have that hello world body. Otherwise, we're gonna have this default path. And we just need to cast that to a string. Okay, so let's generate this again, generate our function. And let's upload it to our Lambda here. Upload from zip file, and I'll select my file. There we go, and let's save it. Okay, so we updated the function. Now let's try that one more time. All right, so now we actually get some JSON back, and I think we can use JQ again. Yeah, so there's our status returns and our default path that gets returned to. So there is, that's kind of how you set up just a basic Lambda API. So this is how you can do it. You could use a switch statement if you don't want to have a bunch of ifs like this, like /hello, /pets, whatever. You could use a switch statement that handles your different paths, or you could set up separate lambdas for each one of those, right? We could do that. And then in the gateway, and this gateway here, we could set the resource to trigger whatever individual lambda we want, right? Remember, with these resources, we're triggering a specific lambda, right? We chose this dev lambda, but maybe you want to have like a /hello lambda or a /pets lambda. So you could create lambdas for each one of your endpoints there, and just have a single lambda handle a single endpoint. Or you could do what we're doing here, which is a little bit more messy, but it gets the job done, where you have a single lambda that handles a bunch of endpoints. Yep, so there is a quick run through there. Hope you found this helpful. Hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Really helps me out, helps the channel grow, gets more exposure, and lets me know I should keep making these videos, and lets me know that you're finding them useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.